everything that you're doing. So you constantly have to pay attention to that. And in a short to long system, because of the intensity levels that you're doing, you've got to really be like strict about that, because you could get them hurt if you're not. Okay? And the neurological system takes time to develop. I read in a conference one time, this guy said, you learn something incorrectly, it takes you 500 hours of specific training to unlearn. So when you get these athletes as freshmen and they're raw and they don't really know what they're doing, that's the best time to make sure that you're attacking these things so that the body knows. It's like a computer. You program it to move slow, it's going to get good at moving slow. You program it to move fast, it's going to get good at moving fast.
So, a couple of advantages. For me, the most important thing is it eliminates the talent issue, because this system is essentially based around working hard. So easiest areas to make quick gains and to make substantial gains is by training the lactic threshold system. So I do a lot of work centered around that, and those longer intervals. Again, they're still running at rather quick tempo, a high intensity. But for me, that's the quickest area we're going to make gains. And when we have these kids that come out in March, no matter how talented they are, we don't have a whole lot of time to worry about making big gains, getting them faster, quicker. Creates versatility, so we can always run down. I'll take the same group sometimes, run them in a 4x4, run them in a 4x2, and a 4x1. There may be one kid that changes out, but for the most part, with the way I train them, they can do all of those things, and they're still competitive, and they're still running good times and competitive in races, no matter what distance. I could probably throw them up in, occasionally during one of those weekday meets, I'll throw them in a 4x8. And again, they're not going to run super stellar times, but they'll be competitive enough based on what we've been doing training-wise. Creates a larger work capacity for a meet. Now, I'm careful with when I put them in 3 events, 4 events, especially in jumps with multiple attempts or something like that. But eventually, as we get towards the end of the season, and I need that kid to be able to do multiple events in a district meet or a conference meet, because of the way they've trained, they have a larger work capacity to have good performances throughout an entire meet. Develops a base for essential peak training, so I'll talk about that as I go through, but it's sort of getting in shape to train, laying somewhat of a groundwork. And then it includes everything that you need for 100, 200, or 400, or a long jump, or a hurdle race, or a triple jump, or a high jump, or anything. It includes all the systems, everything that needs to be trained for a sprinter to make them, one word, faster. It has everything.
Okay. In the short to long system, one of the best things about it is your kids are going to step onto the track. The things you're going to ask them to do if you set the program up properly, they're not going to be afraid to do it. They're not going to be afraid to do it. It keeps them fearless throughout the year, because every time you add a little bit of volume, you know they're ready and prepared to handle it. Now they know as the year goes on, like, okay, these workouts are going to keep getting tougher, keep getting longer. But early on, the whole point is we want to be moving fast. And so it's going to make it easier to guarantee that. Okay? It's specificity. Again, if you're not moving at 92% maximum intensity, you're not actually improving absolute speed. You can improve other things. You can improve energy systems, you can improve lactic threshold, you can improve speed endurance, you can even improve the aerobic system. But you're not improving absolute speed, because that is a neurological activity. Okay? It allows your sprinters to be detail orientated. One of the coolest things last night was Coach Brahman said, I got rid of the stopwatch. That's actually just a really aha moment for me, is because if you're going to be detail orientated, you can't be looking, oh, okay, what is the time? Okay. You've got to watch what they're doing, and then you have to give them feedback. Don't give them like 25 things. Give them 1 or 2 things. And what it allows them to do is that they're always attacking something else besides the time. The times are going to come, but what you're doing is you're creating a culture of, this is the things we're going to do to be good. These are the movements we expect, the body positions we expect. Hey, are you stepping over the knee? Are you dorsiflexing? These are the types of things every time they run by you can talk about. Limits overuse injuries. Obviously, you can have some other types of injuries from this system if you're not doing the things that you need to do, but you're not going to get the injuries of pound for running repeat 6s or 1000s or whatever some coaches think that our systems are. Okay, what's that?
We don't do that.
I know exactly what it is. Nope. But it's easier to combine themes or training modalities. So if you've got this system, hey, we want to do some pretty high-end plyometrics. You can do those things together, and the body doesn't get mixed information. It's getting a lot of the same information by attacking it in different ways, which allows a bigger improvement. Hey, we're doing Olympic lifting, we're doing depth jumping. You know, those things fit together really nice in the short to long system. It also fits really well with the long jump and the 4x1. If you look at the long jump, what do you gotta be, guys, to be a good long jumper? You gotta be fast. Why in the world now on the men's side, the long jump isn't as good? Is because those guys who do the long jump aren't as what? Fast, right? Now on the women's side, it's different. You got Daphne Schippers, you got Bowie, who Coach Browman coaches, and she's fast, and she can jump out of the room because those skills work really good. If you think about the displacement and the power and the pop that you get from the long jump, those things fit nicely together. Everything is skill-based and creates goals all the time throughout training.
So now we're going to go through basically 3 weeks. So a sample week for each of us from our general phase, which we're going to say would be week 3 of the season. So season starts beginning of March. This would be week 3 of the season. For me, again, it's building foundation for later work. And so what I have down here is sort of the main focus of the energy systems of what I'm training. And then over here is the goal. So this is by the end of the year, by late April, early May, this is the workout I want my athletes to be able to perform and be able to hit, you know, whatever target times we have at that point. So we do speed work. The speed day, again, it's 87 to 90% effort. And so I base everything off of their max effort. And for me, the strength day is 75 to 80% of their effort. And so the 87%, and I'll go up to like 93 and be particular about the intensity because it does matter. And so when you're calculating, you know, an athlete's target time for, you know, if they're running a 150, there is kind of a significant difference between if they're at 85% or 87%. So I am particular about those things. But so these are the goals for, by the end of the year, this is where we would want to get to.
Okay, so for me, again, drive phase, acceleration is the skill that needs to be worked on day 1. Day 1, so that's what we're gonna do. And then after you get the drive phase locked in, then you start to work on the transition, then you start to work on max velocity, then you start to work on speed endurance. And that's a progression that you'll see throughout the year. You'll also see the intervals go from short, get expanded, and get longer through all the different workouts. And also through sled drives. If you guys don't have a sled, okay, you guys need to get that. Okay, it's a really, really good tool for that specific strength at the beginning of the year. It's something that can be very useful. And keep it within about 10% of their body weight. Don't load them up really, really big and they're not moving fast, and that's not very specific to the speed that they're gonna have in acceleration. But that's another thing that's a tool that is really useful, very good, and every sprint coach should have it. Okay? Speed will be developed through short interval repetitions. Okay, so you're going to be flying in. So you give them a 20-meter acceleration, which doesn't mean they hit the cone and then they start running. They need to be at full speed before they get to the cone. And then you can do multiple repetitions of that, watching posture, making sure they're nice and upright, hips tall. Then after they get good at that, they're gonna run into a thing called rhythm lock, or a thing called the dynamic stereotype. So then what you do as you build through the season is you're gonna have the flying intervals, then you're gonna have a series of other cones that they're gonna have to do different things, different body positions or different paces to break that up, to force the neurological system to deal with something different, because you don't want them to get into rhythm lock forever, because they're never going to then improve later. So you'd have first cone, flying all out, max velocity. Second cone, A-run. Third cone, we're driving the foot into the ground as hard as we can. Last cone, A-run again, which an A-run is kind of an exaggerated high knee squat, okay? And if you guys want any of these drills or anything like that, I got tons of stuff and we can share it with you guys later. Weight room might be hypertrophic, which is making the muscles bigger, or it might be maximal, which is more neurological, trying to get that rise time up to get the neurological system to fire the most muscle fibers as possible. Depends on what type of athlete you've got. If you have a freshman who is skinny as a rail, but is wired like crazy, but they need a little bit more horsepower, you're gonna need to add, you know, a couple pounds onto them to make them a little bit stronger so they have that horsepower. One of the unique things that we just learned about hypertrophic work where people are like, oh, you don't want them to get too big. Absolutely don't want them to get too big. But one of the good things is those muscles actually have better leverage as they get bigger. So the leverage of the muscles improves. So there is some value to hypertrophic training. Maximal, then you're talking about much shorter, and we'll see these workouts as we move through, but much more limited amount of reps, much bigger rest, you know, really trying to just pull really, really heavy weight as opposed to putting on pounds. And you have to be very careful with hypertrophy. You got to use your eyes. If this guy's getting too big, and he looks like a weeble wobble, you know, then you got to back down on those types of programs. Plyometrics in this phase, this is a little different than some other coaches might do, but I like to do in-place jumps, which, how many of you guys were at Boo's session? Okay, that's that stuff. It's the same exact stuff. And again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to improve the contractile properties of the muscles and the tendons and the ligaments, and trying to prepare them so that they can do the work later, you know, and develop basically their stiffness and their elasticity at the same time from the knee down. So we don't have to be real deep. It's all that stuff that Boo had in this last session.
Okay, so like I said, for me, when I think long, when I say long to short, I'm more so talking about my actual running intervals. So the days that I would focus on here would be the first 4 days of the week.